Hi everyone, I'm Siris Rivas-Verdejo and we're here for Choosing a Different Future. This is our season 3. Thanks for checking in with us. Thanks for coming back and following us for all the lovely questions and comments and inquiries about guests and things like that. Just really, really appreciate it. And yeah, what else can we create this season? I'm still asking that continuously as we're creating. And we have some of our guests from previous seasons that have been visiting us again to give us their updates on what's been going on with them. And our guest for today is a repeat. Welcome back, Matt Lostaglia.
Wanted to make it on to the second season in the first place, but then to get the invite for round 2, that's phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, so what's been going on with you since that last season? I think it was season 2 and it was in like episode 6 or so, sometime in the beginning. What's shifted in your life since then?
So there's been a lot of personal developments and I love the premise that you set, choosing your future.
Choosing a different future.
Choosing a different future.
Choosing your future.
Yeah, choosing a different future by choosing your future, right? So
yeah.
That's what I actually recently made decisions about that. I have the whole new perspective that I started taking approach. But what I did, the two of the big changes that I made in my own like personal life are, one, I barely drink alcohol at all anymore, like maybe at a social event. But outside of that, like that doesn't happen. And I was vaping and I don't vape anymore. And so like kind of both around health, but also like mental and financial and a whole bunch of different other reasons and impacts. But really where all of it stemmed from was I had a thought one day that was like, oh, I wish that I could go back and tell my former self, like if I could go back and talk to past Matt at this time and tell him these things, this is what I would tell him. And then I thought about that and like, how many times is that a conversation that we have? Like, oh gosh, if I knew then what I knew now. And so then I thought about that and I'm like, well, what if I could ask future Matt what in the future Matt that I'm envisioning is like the really successful, awesome, best version of what future Matt could be. And what
many
would
of which is things that maybe you haven't even considered yet.
Exactly. And so I try to keep that perception of things like non-specific. Like I don't think about it. I'm like, he's just the ass kicking Matt in the future, 10 years in the future.
Yeah.
What would he say to do in this situation? Like what decision did he make at this point in his life? And he would come back and be like, hey, this is what I did. And so if you want to like make the decisions that put you on the general path to the ass kicking Matt, then this is what you do. And so rather than waiting for the insight to come, it's more like asking, what would the successful version of me do? He's like, well,
I love that question. Yeah.
Yeah. He wouldn't drink as much. He wouldn't vape. He wouldn't do things that are detrimental to his health. He would make small decisions consistently throughout each day, consciously, that add that 1% difference in the direction that he wants to go. And that's actually based off a book that I've recently come into contact with called Atomic Habits.
I haven't heard of that book.
Oh my gosh.
Do you recall the author off the top of your head?
I don't, but I'm going to see if I can multitask and talk about it while I look it up.
Awesome.
But it's phenomenal because it talks about the idea of, the small changes, like focusing on the little things, because it's not about, life doesn't change in singular moments. Like it kind of does. They use an example of an ice cube of like where you are, like say you're in a room and it's 24 degrees and then you are making change, like the changes in the temperature are happening 1 degree at a time. Like, all right, this
and
hour.
I'm guessing we're starting with 24 degrees Fahrenheit, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For those of us.
Yeah. Fair point.
There's a lot of
fair
people
point.
around the world that might be watching this, so gotta be specific because it's a very big difference.
Yeah, no. And that would mess up the whole analogy.
So we're starting at a colder temperature, and we're the ice cube in a certain
Right.
moment in our lives where we're about to make a
Exactly.
choice about something, and then
Yeah. And so the idea is like you continue to make these 1 degree changes, right? And you make the 1 degree change and you make the 1 degree change. And so you're at 25, 26, 27, 28. And all of these, you're not seeing any changes, like you're making changes and you're making these small little differences. And then the 1 degree change where the ice starts to melt when you hit 32 and then 33, then that's when people outside of you can start to acknowledge like, oh, that's happened, but they didn't see the 7, 8, 9 degrees that you did before then. And so everything, and it's easy for us as short-sighted and short attention span humans that we are to focus on those things and be like, oh, that's where we get like the overnight success. Very, very rare, very few and far between that. It just, somebody just.
And what if we could have both? What if we can have those big moments and also acknowledge all the little steps and all those little moments?
Oh, absolutely.
Small choices that are also moving us in the direction that we'd like to be. And part of the show is, yes, our own individual futures with our choices, and how, since we're all connected, that it's actually creating a united collective future, multiple futures collectively as well.
Sure.
I similar to your question about asking your future self, what could I choose right now to create this life that I'd like to have, or this version of me. And for me, it's more of an energetic sense, because I really try not to define it so it can keep surprising me and blowing my mind. And
Absolutely.
It continues to every day, which is great. Is also really looking at what I would like the futures to be like for the world and for the earth, and what are the choices that I'm making now that are either contributing to that or undermining that.
Yeah.
If it's like, is this actually creating my life, living business, and a sustainable planet, or is it destroying my life, living business, and a sustainable planet? And a lot of us don't want to look at that. I'm hoping this show is helping people look at that a little bit more, and seeing all the varied ways that can show up. But I love this question that you're playing around with. So what has it created so far? You not drinking as much and not vaping. What have you noticed?
So one, physically, I feel better. And I think that the most tangible and which is weird, just in the fact that this is the case, is really the impact mentally. Like the fact that I look at myself and I know that I'm making the choices that are creating this difference. And even if there were like if I got like blood work tests done and everything, and they're like, you're just as healthy as before, actually you're slightly less healthy, like I'm assuming that's not the case, right? But but if it were,
maybe that'll be what we talk about in the next time you're on the show. Here are my blood work
results. Right. But yeah, no, it's it's empowering because it's my choice, right? Rather than doing something that is socially acceptable and socially promoted, and like drinking and like going out with friends and like consuming alcohol and that kind of stuff, and associating it with certain events, like, oh, we're having a barbecue, I should have beer. Oh, I'm watching a football game, I should have beer. Doing those things, but choosing my own path in it. That has been the biggest thing that I've noticed, is just that like I feel mentally better because like I'm in control. I took control of that back rather than just the kind of laissez-faire going about it, whimsically. So that feels good. That feels good. And ironically, right now has been a really crazy, hectic time for me in my Army profession. And after kind of clearing up that crap for my health and mental and everything else aspect, I was like, I want to revamp. I want to relook at my show and what I'm doing, and I want to triple the production. So instead of 1 day a week, I'm looking 3 days a week with different aspects for each one. You know what I mean? And I'm like, this is awesome. And I got so many ideas and I'm really excited about it. I have no idea how I'm going to make it work, but that's not where my head is focused at. It's not like, oh, okay, well, I need to work around this. No, I'm just going to do it.
So
And
for those
some
of
of it
you
might
that
fail.
don't know yet, because some of the people that might just be catching you for the first time and they haven't seen the last episode or haven't been following you on social media, and if you haven't yet, I don't get why. Like everybody needs to know about Matt. Matt has this great show called Burn Your Boats. And we talked about that and the creation of it and kind of the journey to having it actualize in the world in our last chat on our show. And so definitely check that out. We'll put the links for that in the description below and everything. You get to check that out. But yeah, it's so cool that it's this constantly evolving thing and that you're really revisiting it and not having any aspect of your life, including this business project, it's not momentum. It's really like, okay, what's actually required now? What is this going to create? What would be really fun? All right, how can we take it to another level? And it sometimes that other level that people consider is thinking it's more work or more production, like what you're doing. And that's one way. And there's also could just be, let's just pivot and take it to another track. Like, this season, I'm actually not doing more frequent shows, but I'm ramping it up for me. And it's been bringing up a lot for me because I'm doing some episodes in English, like with what we're talking about with you, and then some episodes in Spanish. And for me, as some of you might know, Spanish was my first language. And yet I've had this whole journey with it where it finds it lots of times easier to speak in English than in Spanish. And yet I'm pushing my comfort zone and inviting y'all to join the ride with that and seeing, who else it can reach, because this idea of us creating our futures and creating our lives with our choices is for everybody. It's for every language. It's for every country. And if more and more people actually recognize that and then start taking steps to create a future that's more congruent with what they would really like, instead of based on other people's points of views, like family and your partners and your culture, I wonder what world we would actually live in. What world would we have? Because I don't get that most people actually want all the war and the drama and the upset and things like that. I suspect there's a lot more people out there that would like harmony and would like fun and would like innovation and things like that than we're maybe giving as much credit to, I'm hoping.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really, everything that I've truly believe that everything that is hate filled is taught. Like we're not born with hate in our hearts. We're born with a natural, like we're communal, we're a social people. And so, but we're dealing with so much right now with internet and the connection that we have, which is amazing, but it like overloads how we were like originally designed, almost, if you will, if you wanted to talk about design, or like there's a certain limit to the number of people, like the real true connections that we can have before things start to become more superficial. And it's okay for those to shift, and they talk about that in business. And once you exceed like 100 people in your business, then that's when the dynamics inside of the business start to shift, because that's when you create echelons and intermediary management and stuff like that.
Is that referring to like employees in your business that are part of it?
Right.
Or
Yes.
like clients?
Yeah. That's more of a traditional kind of employee number, not like 100 clients. You could have, a couple thousand. And then that just depends on what type of business you're in. If you're in like a service-based industry and you're dealing more intimately, I guess, with your clientele. But yeah, no, it's an interesting problem set that we deal with. I mean, we've been warring since we've been alive, since humans have been around. And so but it's a lot of it is just, it's based off what we're taught. We're taught that this is ours and that's theirs, and if we want more, then we have to take their stuff, and that was the way that the world operated for so long.
Well, and that's the whole thing. It has this underlining like scarcity mentality. And you and I have spoken a lot about that over the time that we've known each other. Like that's one of the things that I think was a commonality in our conversations, was we both don't function from the point of view of lack, that there's this limited resources. It's like, maybe we need to move some stuff around and actually generate more, and it be like a very generative space. So whatever is actually there can create more, instead of like, oh, there's a limit to any of this, be it from, natural resources of the earth to, money, energy, all these different things. And that really makes it a very different space to create from, to choose from, and also a very different space to have conversations through. So like, if you're talking to somebody and they have the point of view that there's a lack in the world, there's a limit, and also that their choices don't have any importance, like there's just, they're kind of like going through the motions, and everything's already written, everything's already decided, and they're just kind of walking the path that's already there.
Oh yeah, like Shakespearean, like we're all actors on the stage. I forget the exact quote, but the world is a stage, and we're all just playing our role. It's interesting that the roles that people choose to assume. Yeah, that's like a theme in my show, is talking about the internal narrative that you have with yourself. And it's interesting that we have it, and once you bring it up, most people are like, yeah, I can acknowledge that. They're like, I have these truths about myself that I accept. Like, I'm bad at math, or whatever the case may be. I can't write very well. But it's when you acknowledge that, I would hope, my hope is that you can start to make yourself the hero in your narrative, and then you could start living up to that. All you have to do is just start by just changing the verbiage, and just change it. Like,
because the words are powerful, and we've talked about, this is another thing we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
We'll call each other out on this all the time. Like, oh, well, that was interesting that I said it that way. Wait, is that actually true? Like, is that word actually accurate?
Well, there's so much power. Just like you said, there's so much power in words. Words have meaning, and they can be so charged with energy. And so it's good to have somebody that's willing to call it out for you, but it's important for the individual to really take that half second and think about, if the certain words that you're using, because a certain word that I might use might be charged with all sorts of negativity and underlying angst or whatever the case may be.
And then for me, it has no charge at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
And that'll influence that internal dialogue that you were referring to a lot. Yeah. Because so it's like, it's the power of words for that interpersonal conversations, those interactions. And it's also, I think it really needs to start with how you're talking about yourself, your body, your life, your money, your business, all these different things. When you actually start paying attention to that, and have people like you, like I have such great friends. I'm so lucky to have that, where they'll kind of point it out to you, but really to empower you to still twist and turn and reshape and deprogram perhaps yourself for the internal dialogue, because that's going to be the platform that you're choosing from, and then therefore you're creating your life and your future from.
Yeah. Well, and just like you said, when we're talking about creating our future and the joint communal future of humanity on Earth, like think about the difference that conversation is with the people around you once you identify those things in yourself, and you make those 1 degree changes, and you shift your goals and just the way that you think about yourself in a more positive way. And then like how that changes that communication and that conversation with somebody else, especially in a situation where there's disagreements, and we're talking about how do we best come together in the future as humanity. I just had an amazing debate, like 3-4 day long debate with a guy on politics online, which is well, it's interesting because that used to be a thing. I haven't done that in probably over a year. I mean, some conversations with people in person, but like a political debate. And it was funny because I saw his post and I was like, am I going to do it? If I do it, I'm going to go in.
All in.
and I was like, you know what? Let's brush off the dust. Let's see what happens. And it was all about the universal basic income and stuff like that. No need to go into crazy political details, but the only reason
I bring some of that, you can check out Matt's show about that.
Yeah, no, because my show doesn't do that.
I'm kidding. Yeah, no, his show actually doesn't do that. Yeah. Bill might just have to message him individually and have a chat about it.
Oh, I'm all about it. But the only reason I brought it up was just because the way that the conversation went was respectful. Most of the people participating in the conversation were actually reading, taking into consideration the details of what the other person was saying, and they were avoiding what I see most of the time in the failures in communication when we're disagreeing is a lot of use of logical fallacies like ad hominems, where you start to address the person instead of the issue. And that never happened. There was a lot of respect. There was a lot of allowance. There was trust given, like, for information that was being relayed. Like, okay, like, I'll take that at face value rather than trying to attack every little detail. Like, okay, let's go with that, and let's keep going. And at the end of it was, you get to a place where you can agree to disagree. Like, listen, I respect you, I love you, and I would fight to the death to make sure that you have the right to be able to say exactly what it is that you believe, and I will stand firmly on the other side of the fence, standing up on my soapbox saying that you're wrong and this is why. And I love, and that's so important to be able to do. And at the end of the day, I love this guy. He's an amazing person and he's got a great heart.
Yeah,
he's wrong, but
just wrong. Like, great, awesome, and absolutely, like, incorrect.
Right.
Yeah. No big deal, because I'm always right. Yeah.
Always.
Oh my gosh. Well, we've had those discussions as well.
Sure.
There's this moment that was kind of this pivotal when we used to date. There was this pivotal moment where we were on this long drive. It was dark, Georgia dark, because dark and night here is very different than night where I grew up in Chicago, where it's like basically daytime because the highways are fully lit.
Oh yeah, there's no lights down here on the highways.
Which I've learned to appreciate because they're showing that they're caring about the sea turtles. And
that's true. That's such a big deal.
And so that's part of the sustainable earth that we're talking about. That's a small choice that isn't actually very small. That's a statewide policy that I actually have learned to embrace. It took me a while.
It makes me so happy.
But yeah, it's actually, I'm really glad, we got to see the sea turtle sanctuary together. That was awesome. But that conversation that night, it was this, there was no getting out of the car. We're driving an hour or something.
We were marooned.
I guess I could have been like, pull over right now.
I'm out. I'm walking home.
But it just never even got to that point because we came from this place of like, let's just play and see where this goes.
Yeah.
And later on, in retrospect, we both expressed that we were kind of like, this might be the end, this conversation, but we're gonna have it anyway. And that was that internal dialogue for us where we're like, all right, let's see if we actually still decide to hang out after having this conversation and going here. And exactly what you were talking about with your friend that you had this 3 to 4 day debate about. It wasn't a 3 to 4 days, even though there have been the multiple.
But the amount of content and ideas that were relayed was similar, if not in excess. You know what I mean? Because this is like going back like 8 hours past and you send a comment or whatever. So you and I were like, we were in a dedicated for an hour and a half. Like, like we are going to sit here and talk, and there's no break. There's no time to collect your thoughts. Like, control your emotions. And
there was a lot of deep breathing on my part. Because you're a bit of a poker with you. Let's poke and let's see how far I can go lovingly. And all right, really, look, where are you with this? Poke, poke, poke. And it was great though for me because I really had to look and revisit again where I was with it, and I recognized also that it had shifted dynamically since the last time I had looked at that topic. And so it was a really great invitation to say, hey, is this actually still where I'm at with this? Is this actually still my stance on it?
That's so mature and I feel like rare a quality of people today. Like there seems to be some sort of public credit or currency in not changing your mind. Like your opinion's valued higher because you've had it since you were 16. You know, like I value somebody's opinion actually more that's changed their mind when they were given new information or new information was discovered about something. And then they're like, oh, well, let me rethink this. Like the ego check that you have to have in order to do that. And that's one of the things that I think is important too, whenever you're having these types of conversations with anybody, is that I don't think that you should go into with the idea that I'm going to change your mind. Like, listen, I'm going to present some information, but the only way that minds get changed is in the individual themselves. It's very unlikely that your mind gets changed by somebody else. Like, it's a personal journey to get from one stage to another. You can facilitate that by providing information, but if you're looking to provoke tears or an emotional response, you know what I mean? Like, and you're looking.
No, if anything, you wanted me to laugh and not be so serious about it.
Yeah,
I think helped when it was particularly tense. But that whole digging in your heels, it's. I get what you mean about that people often value like when someone holds on to their same point of view forever and ever. And for me, that adaptability, that willingness to assimilate new information and evolve is huge. It's huge for friends. It's huge for anyone that I would hire to join my business. It's huge for anyone that I would want to co-create with. You know, it's huge because it's even, let's look at the business aspect. And we talked about like, a company like Kodak or something like that, or like Blockbuster. It's there when they weren't willing to innovate and shift, you die. You're not, it's not going to work. You have to start life, and all the things around you changes. If you don't take that in and start shifting what you choose, it's not going to last.
Something that I love about entrepreneurs, and there's just the experiences that I've had on my show and being able to talk to you. You were the first one, and I still love that. It's amazing. What a way to kick it off. And but you were such a great example. You are such a great example of it. But then everybody else too. I mean, there's not a single person I've talked to that has their heels dug into the sand when it comes to their perspective. And also, more importantly, their head isn't under a rock. You know what I mean? Like in their industry that they chose, their head is on a swivel. Like they're looking around like, okay, what changes are happening? How do I adapt? And okay, I see that this is coming up. And I don't see that in industries where it seems like it's really going to matter. Like truck drivers, like the dudes and chicks putting doors on Fords in these factories. Like where's your head? Where are you thinking? And I'm not saying that like, well, I guess I am saying that like you need to be paying attention, and it is your fault if you get quote unquote blindsided, because I'm not in your industry and I know that your industry is ending. So if you're not making plans for it now, or if you're not in a stage where you're going to retire in the next 3 to 5 years, having sympathy for somebody like that, like it's a little hard for me, because you're choosing to not pay attention to the world around you. Like, things are happening, and where information is so readily accessible now that not paying attention is, I don't know. It's detrimental to yourself and your future.
Well, the part of that is like, yes, people sometimes are that aspect of they're not willing to pay attention. They're not willing to like take in that input and then assimilate and then also choose something different. There's that. But if you don't, but that also gets back to our original point that well, what platform are they functioning from? Are they functioning from the idea that their choices actually create their lives, or their choices, everything's already written, so it doesn't really matter what I choose? So I could go and try to find another job or go into another industry, but if they've already bought that they have no control, they have no power, they have no say in their lives, then they could be getting all this input and they're not going to take it in. They're not going to pivot.
Yeah.
While for those entrepreneurs that you're talking with, that you're interviewing, and the people that I am fortunate enough to be creating with as well, they're not just take in the information, they also know with every fiber of their being that they have choice, that they have total choice, and that their choices are what's going to make the difference in their life, and not necessarily what someone, that their awareness, their willingness to receive the awareness of what's going on around them as well. It's a simultaneous, both the awareness of the external and the awareness of yourself and your willingness to choose. All of that is going to play a part. But if someone, I just had a conversation with a family member, and this family member very well, where everything is already done, it's already written, and so there's no arguing. It's not even fun to debate or to discuss things, because we're functioning from a different platform. And so I'm wondering, because we're running out of time a little bit, but I'm curious for you, because you are really good. I got to give you kudos for this. You're really good at adapting yourself, even when you're interacting and talking with someone who they think everything's written. Like, they're really pessimistic, they're really negative. And what do you do with someone like that they're functioning from that platform of, I don't really have choice and everything's this external, and you're debating about something like politics or like business, like money,
I think that
very kind of volatile for some people.
The place that you always have to start from, if you are going into it and you genuinely care, right? Like, this is somebody that matters to you. Just typically, I would hope that's the reason why you're engaging in the conversation in the first place. Obviously for you, it's a family member, but it's not always the case.
Yeah.
But it's important to have that mental check throughout the conversation. Like, if you feel yourself starting to veer, to remind yourself that, like, the reason that I'm doing this is because I love them. I'm coming from a place of love. And to assume that they're coming from an honest place that is not like malice filled, like maybe they're potentially ignorant or naive to some aspects that may come very naturally to you. And so not demeaning them and coming at them with a level of respect and really being open to listen. And really from that stage, engaging with them, I would steal all of the things from your book, when it comes to asking questions. You I
was like, what book?
You don't know, you haven't read my book yet. No, but just being and actually, like, you can ask questions in a way where you're looking to guide the conversation, but you can't let that overpower what it is that they're saying, and you don't glaze over their responses. Like, take that in, like, this may be what's true for them, and be willing to ask that question. Like, is this what you think? Is this what you feel? Like, where did that come from? Like, where did this idea first come in, where you felt control? And then bring up, it almost turns into like a therapy session where it's like, what was the point? What was the last time that you did something that you felt like you were in control? But asking more questions that require them to think and actually respond using open-ended questions versus yes or no questions. Because that allows them, really, yes or no questions are going to allow them to firm up, even if they don't really agree with what they're saying. But if the yes can help them enforce the foundation that they already have built, then they'll do it. And they're like, okay, there's another break. Yes. I don't have control. No, we don't have choice. Everything's already determined. It's like, no, do not give them that opportunity. Make them define what they're talking about. Make them present, and if you know them well enough, then you can present things that they might not view as being significant but are contrary to what they believe, and you can present that as evidence. Like, look, you remember this time when we were out with these friends and like they were going to do this thing and you're like, no, like I think I'm going to go do this instead. Like that was you taking control and choosing you in your own life and what you wanted to do, and not just going along with the group. And just being able to pay attention and having those data points, because, and again, I think you have to give them room to reflect as well. Like if you're looking for a change in that person during that conversation, that's not going to happen. Your best case scenario is that they're able to sit with that and let it marinate in their minds over the next day, week, month, year, and with that, whenever you end the conversation with them, whenever it's over, we've talked about like the compliment sandwich, I think.
Yeah.
So that's a strategy that you can use if you're trying to correct somebody's behavior. Like, hey, listen, I really appreciate what you did here. This wasn't right, but I like that you were here on time and you showed up, and without being asked, like you tried to take action on this. That's really awesome. And so like like it's happy, fix this. You're still awesome. Right. And so, but with that, like you could do that with a conversation, with that whole conversation, and if it's going to go that way, you start out like, the key thing there is when you're ending it, regardless of how much they're fighting you and disagreeing with you, if you're injecting them with the thoughts that might help them to shift to a place of self-determination, self-ownership, and being able to choose their own future, you just reaffirm your love for them, and just like, listen, I'm here for you always. I love you, like what, and if there's anything that I can ever do to help you out, like I'm here for you. And then that kind of greases the skids to get them to potentially that change, that beneficial change for them in their lives. That's what I would do.
See, and this is why I asked you about it. You see, y'all, this is the genius that it is. And you should see how he does this in person with new people. It's particularly impressive. I was like, I'm so glad Matt is here to handle this person right now, because I am not. I do not have the allowance required for this person. Now I've increased. I will acknowledge that that's definitely better, and I've been building up my muscles with that. Just thank you so much for those tips. And everyone, check out Matt's show, Burn Your Boats. Again, we'll put that info, and you'll just see it with his contact information. Message him directly, post any questions that you have below the video. Let us know what you think. Like the channel, like the video if you enjoyed this, and let people know about it. It's always a treat to have you on the show, Matt. Thanks for coming back.
It's always a pleasure to be here. I love our conversations. They never go the direction I think they're gonna go. And the value that I get from it alone is worth the time that I'm investing into it. And so I hope that the people listening got as much out of it that I did. And so thanks everyone for coming and listening, and thank you for having me on again.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone, and check out choosingadifferentfuture.com to view any other videos and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, bye.